This is about question 5 on the worksheet from April 2nd in 2020. The question asked if the price of floor space in apartment rentals rises 20%. In other words, a 1,000 square foot apartment will now rent for the same as a 1,200 square foot apartment did before. And in a separate scenario, the price of baklava also rises by 20%. And then the question is, which good will see its quantity demanded fall more in percent terms? This is not an easy question. It's complicated by the fact that the answer is not one that we would necessarily be able to determine given the information there. So ambiguity is okay, and some questions will have ambiguous answers, and that's okay. And this is one of those. Okay, so the point is then to figure out what would determine the answer. What are the factors that are relevant, and under what conditions would one be more elastic than the other? So this is about elasticity, as you would have guessed by what I just said. And you should be able to tell that by the fact that it's asking about percent changes in quantity given percent changes in price. And remember that elasticity is the percent change in quantity from a given percent change in price, or a 1% change in price leads to what percent change in quantity. Okay, so as a reminder, we're thinking about the elasticity of demand. So we have a demand curve like this, and we're asking, well, if the price goes up by some percent, how much does the quantity change? So how much does the quantity go down? Okay, so we need to be comparing two different goods and asking which will have a smaller change in the quantity as a result of the change in the price. Okay, so this is about elasticity. It's also kind of about slopes. And we need to think about the two goods are rental space for apartments and baklava. Okay, so what do we know about each of these that's relevant to elasticities? Well, remember that elasticity of demand is about how easy it is to substitute toward other things. Another way to think of it is often, which one do we view as a necessity, or how important is it in our lives? Okay, so we should be thinking about ease of substitution, necessityness. Actually, I don't know how to spell necessity. For some reason, double consonants in English give me a lot of trouble. And the other thing we need to be concerned about, however, is the proportion of our income or our wealth that's made up with this purchase. So size of the purchase. Okay, so when we're looking at these things, which one is easy to substitute? This one is easy to substitute. There are a lot of substitutes for baklava. Other desserts, you can pour some honey on some pistachios and eat that. I actually do that. It's delicious. I highly recommend it. If you don't have any baklava, just put some honey on it. Pistachios. All right. So there are a lot of substitutes for this. So it's easy to substitute. Now think to yourself, if it's easier to substitute, will that make it more or less elastic? That's right, more elastic. Okay, so this makes baklava more elastic. Okay, so flatter. All right. So I'm going to say more elastic here. Should probably use a different color. And then, well, in the same way, that's why rental space is seen as a necessity. It's because it's hard to substitute it for other things. It's an important part of our life, and we don't really have a lot of alternatives. So again, this makes baklava more elastic. Okay? But which one is a larger purchase as a proportion of our incomes? This one, you probably are buying these little things about this big and they cost you $2 or $3, and they're very small. This one is going to cost $1,000 maybe. Okay, so that makes Well, think to yourself, if the size of the purchase is bigger, does that make it more or less elastic? Does that mean we respond more or less to the price? That's right, we respond more to the price. So that makes this one more elastic. Okay, and the reason that is that if it's a large fraction of our income, then when the price for that good goes up, we don't have a lot of options, essentially. It takes away a huge fraction of our income, so if we want to keep buying the same amount, we have to buy a lot less of other stuff. So if my rent goes up from $1,000 per month to $1,200 per month, then I have to buy $200 less of stuff every month. That's a lot of stuff to buy less of. If the price of baklava goes up by 20% from $1 to $1.20, then I have to buy 20 cents less of other stuff, which isn't a big impact on my life. But that $200 less of stuff is a huge impact on my life, and so I'll be very responsive to that price increase. So that makes this demand more elastic. Okay, so we have two effects here, or one effect that's making baklava, these are essentially the same effect. One effect that's making baklava more elastic, and one effect that's making the rental space more elastic. Okay, so we don't really know which effect is going to be more important, but we can say, well, if this size of purchase effect is more important, then we'd say that the economists would say the income effect from this is very important. Then that will make the rental space demand more elastic, so flatter. So that would make this one the rental space, and this one the demand for baklava. Right? That's if this effect is more important than this effect. But if this effect, the ease of substitution, is more important than the size of the purchase effect, in other words, economists would say if the substitution effect is more important than the income effect in this case, then these would be switched. And that answers the question. Now, on an exam, of course, you don't have to actually say which one it is. You can just say, well, if this is more important, then this will happen, just like I did.